Hey there you guys, so for my second discussion video, I wanted to talk about the new Wolverine movie that's coming out. I kind of wanted to talk about it because for anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge Marvel head. I love the comics, I love the Marvel movies, I love pretty much everything that has come out that has been under the Marvel name. And the reason I want to talk about Wolverine in particular is because my favorite franchise from the Marvel Universe by far is the X-Men franchise. I love the X-Men comics. I love the movies for the most part. And I guess in order to paraphrase this, I did not like two of the movies from the X-Men universe. I did not like the third X-Men movie, and I did not like X-Men Origins Wolverine. X-Men Origins Wolverine was by far the worst in the franchise, which was so disheartening because you had a movie which stars my favorite character from the franchise, at least from the films, and then they include one of my favorite characters from the comics, Gambit, although he's only in the movie for 10 minutes. And the reason I had such an issue with that movie was because they really did a disservice to a lot of the characters, as well. Bad CGI, bad writing, many different things to talk about, but that's not what I'm talking about in particular. I'm saying that it left me with a very bad taste in my mouth when it came to the X-Men movies, because we had just had X-Men 3, and then a few years later we had X-Men Origins Wolverine. And so you could definitely see that there was this trend that the movies were just going downhill. So it made me very wary when X-Men First Class came out. And I was very nervous about this movie. I was so nervous going into it that it was going to suck. And ultimately, I walked away from that movie having a really good time. I love X-Men First Class. It's such a good movie. So it gave me this new hope of like, okay, if they can bounce back from X-Men Origins Wolverine with First Class, I can have some hope for future projects that they work on. So when I think about the new Wolverine movie that's coming out, especially considering the trailer just came out, one of the biggest issues I've had with the new Wolverine movie that's coming out is that it is going to be technically the newest sequel in terms of the franchise. It is going to be the most recent, as in it takes place after the third movie. It's not going to be a sequel, prequel, I guess, if that's what you want to say, but like, it's not a sequel to the prequel that we had for X-Men Origins Wolverine, nor for X-Men First Class. It takes place after the third X-Men movie. I don't necessarily have a huge problem with that, but it is a little weird to me. And to just go on a little bit more, I think one of the reasons I enjoy X-Men First Class so much was because we finally had an X-Men movie where Logan wasn't the main character of the movie. If you really think about it, obviously the character that has sort of been the connecting thread between all the X-Men movies has been Wolverine. The only exception to that would be X-Men First Class. Like, he only appears as a brief cameo. Otherwise, he has no direct or important role in the film. And it was really refreshing to have an X-Men movie where Wolverine was not the main character. I know you can say that technically the plot doesn't revolve around him in some of the other movies, but in every sense, he is sort of our in for the movies. He is our connection as the audience to the film. He is the most well-developed character in the movie series. He is the most complex. He has the most backstory, and he is the most, I want to say, likable. I mean, even with characters like Professor X and Cyclops and Rogue, like, you would expect these to be the more likable characters, because the typical traits of Logan are that he's a bit of a douche, and he's a bit of an ass, and he's a bit of a lone wolf type. Like, he doesn't work well with others, and yet, as the movies have progressed and gone on, he has become the most likable person in all of these movies. It's mainly because of lack of development of the other characters, realistically. And that's not to say, again, that the movies are bad. I do still really enjoy them. It's just the main reason I enjoy them is because of the plot themselves and because of Logan. When I constantly see that there's new Wolverine movies coming out, there's Wolverine movies being developed, it kind of bothers me a little bit that he's the one getting so much individual screen time when he has, for the most part, been the driving force behind all the other X-Men movies. Again, which is one of the reasons why I was so happy when I saw X-Men First Class, and he basically had no input and no impact on the plot, and he was basically not even in it. And it was actually really refreshing to see a real development of character from characters we'd already known, like Professor X and Magneto. And then, actually going into some of the other characters, like, we didn't nearly get as much backstory on the other mutants in the movie, but you had enough backstory in the main important characters. So you had Mystique, you had Professor X, and you had Magneto. Those are the three main characters that they needed to develop the most. Considering that they had been in all the other X-Men movies, you'd think that they would have had a little bit more development, but you realize that once Wolverine is taken out of the movie, you have very underdeveloped characters. Again, it just kind of bothers me a little bit that Wolverine is, again, getting so much screen time. But it makes sense, because Wolverine is by far the most marketable character from the franchise. He is... Wolverine, if you want to think about what Marvel as a comic book company kind of stands for in terms of what their general iconographic hero is, it is the anti-hero. It is a complex hero. Marvel is much better at developing complex heroes than DC is, and if you really think about it, and it's one of the reasons why I don't like DC all that much. And I'm not saying DC is bad in terms of their artwork or bad in terms of their writing or anything like that. It's just I can't get attached to superheroes that are so squeaky clean and are so unfazed by a lot of things. They are so adamant to follow the straight and narrow. And I would more identify that kind of trait with someone like Captain America, but even Captain America isn't so super naive to be that straight and narrow. Like, yes, he is very driven to be the good person in the situation, but even he isn't stupidly naive when it comes to that. Like, the best example I can think of exemplifying the overall character of Marvel superheroes is the Civil War arc. The idea that these characters who tended, for the most part, to identify with one trait or another, or one path over another, they were very much turned around during the Civil War crossover, when you had Iron Man as the leader in order to go through with superhero registration, and Captain America as the one leading the rebellion. That is such a huge example of the fact that, especially for a character like Captain America, which we can pretty much definitively say is Marvel's most squeaky clean superhero, is the one that is going against authority in that arc. It was really interesting to see that. And I think when you think about Marvel's heroes, a lot of them have these really dark backstories, or they have troubles figuring out sometimes which side of an argument they're going to be on, if they're going to become a villain or if they're going to become the hero. A lot of the times you see that conflict going on. And Wolverine is very much one of those characters that you think he might go either way. Like, maybe not so much nowadays, but when he was first introduced in the comics, you really thought, maybe he could just abandon us at any time because it doesn't suit him. Even some of my absolute favorite characters in comic books, like Rogue, started off as a villain. She was originally a villain working with Mystique and the Brotherhood, and it wasn't until she basically got sick and tired of being the bad guy that she joined the X-Men and has basically become one of the lead figures of the X-Men. She's become a leader figure, especially considering that the X-Men now are separated in different parts of the United States. Like, that's just sort of one of the great things I've always loved about Marvel Comics, is these really complex and developed characters. And I always kind of felt that the X-Men franchise was really good at doing that with Wolverine, but kind of bad at doing it with all their other characters. So I don't know if I'm necessarily psyched to see another Wolverine movie, because it's like, well, if you've read the comics, you know what his backstory is, and the Silver Samurai arc, the one that was done with Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, it's a really good comic. It's a really good series, but it's not like it doesn't give us much more insight to who Logan is or what he's about than what we've already seen in terms of the movies and in terms of the comics. I mean, okay, maybe not in the comics. In the comics, it was more important to have that series come out for Wolverine because at the time we didn't really know super much about him. But in the movies, we've already had 4 other films pretty much just dedicated to telling us his backstory. And it's like, do we really need another one? That doesn't mean I'm not going to see it. I'm still psyched to see it because I will see anything Marvel puts out at this point. But I am a little tired of seeing so many movies kind of just centered around Wolverine. I really do hope that the next X-Men movie, Days of Future Past, I really hope that it doesn't do the same thing that they've been doing with all the other X-Men movies and kind of zero in on Wolverine. I would like the focus to remain on Professor X and Magneto predominantly. I would like that to continue to be the main focus, but considering the Days of Future Past storyline, you know, it could really be up in the air with a lot of different things. You can play with a lot of different character dynamics, especially considering they're bringing pretty much everyone from the original cast back for this film, and plus integrating the new cast from First Class. So that'll be really interesting to see. Getting back to Wolverine though, the trailer does look really interesting. I'm really excited to see what they're going to throw at Logan in the film, despite the fact I've read the comics. But it's like, I want to see what they're going to do because you never quite know what a comic book movie is going to throw at you. Adaptations can mean so many different things if you really think about it. And I've always maintained a sort of criteria for adaptation is 2 things. If they can maintain the character's integrity and the what that character stands for, their personality traits, and their general history, that's one thing that I'm like, okay, you've got the characters down. Like, you could throw them in any situation now. I will believe it is that character. That's the most important thing, is they maintain character integrity. And the second thing is, if you're following something like a book, major plot points. You obviously have to include major plot points, but otherwise, if it's not super relevant, then I don't mind if it gets taken out or if it gets edited or something even gets added. That I don't really mind so much. Like, so long as the core plot line is still pretty much the same and they keep character integrity, like they don't add anything that changes character integrity or they don't take away anything that takes away character integrity, then I'm totally fine with it. But those are the 2 things that I look for when it comes to adaptations. With comic books, it's a little trickier because you can go through so many different plot lines in a comic and pick and choose kind of what you want to include and what you want to take out. Or you could just create a whole new storyline altogether. The Avengers was really good at doing that because the only consistent thing with the Avengers was the fact that Loki was the first major villain that they took on as a group together. That was the very first villain that they faced. But otherwise, like, that was a whole independently thought up plot line. It wasn't directly tied to anything in the comics. You know, it was really well done, and it's like, it felt like a comic book movie though. It just because you didn't follow a specific storyline from a comic doesn't mean it's a bad adaptation, which is why I'm more open when it comes to comic book adaptations. Again, with X-Men First Class as well, I was really open to that because I realized they have to keep 2 things in mind. The continuity of the other X-Men movies, which kind of doesn't make sense in certain aspects when you think about it, and as well they have to include the information that they have from the comic books. So it's a weird mesh that they have to do, so it's like they have to take into consideration 2 different source materials. It's not just one, so the X-Men First Class was a lot trickier to handle, and I still think that they did a really good job, ignoring the very minor nitpicks that I have with its continuity. Despite the issues I may have with the Wolverine being the constant lead character in a lot of these movies, I still look forward to the Wolverine movie. I will be going to see it, there's no doubt. It's probably not my most anticipated comic book movie of the year. Iron Man 3 is probably my top choice. Man of Steel would probably follow that after. But yeah, I'm still looking forward to it. I'm still going to be excited for it, and I will never say anything definitively bad about something until I see it. So what do you guys think about the Wolverine movie, its trailer, and what it looks like? Do you guys have any opinions or comments that you want to leave? Just please leave them below. I want to know what you guys think about the upcoming film. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later.